I very much am looking forward to sharing this with you today. This is the District 7 TLI Round 2 Advanced Pathways Elective. The title of this presentation, Pathways Growing Toastmasters Members One at a Time. The event format for today, there is going to be time for questions throughout. We're first of all going to start with the Pathways proposition. Why are we doing Pathways in the first place? Then I also want to share something about a phenomenon called a Pathways Tutor that never sleeps. I'm going to reveal this to you. We're going to cover solutions to two very common challenges that come up in Pathways. We're going to then follow through the promise about the advanced pathways, if you will, some miscellaneous intermediate and advanced, as well as Pathways Mentor Program information. And then finally, there will be an explicitly open Q&A period at the end. Why study in Pathways? Well, there are 4 competencies that I want to bring to your attention, with the 5th one being a result. The first one is public speaking, interpersonal communication, strategic leadership, management, and the result of these 4, I believe, leads to confidence. These are the competencies that guide the Pathways curriculum. Pathways is the curriculum that Toastmasters International uses. There are 11 paths. I'll just quickly go through these. I'll let you look at these. These are the separate curricula of the main curriculum of Pathways. And by the way, if I'm going a little quickly, I will be sending you the slides afterwards. So please don't feel like you have to write frantically on anything that I'm saying here, because you'll have a copy as well as a copy of this recording coming shortly. My personal value from Pathways, I think it's, of course, we have the stated value that Toastmasters put out there, but I have gained 2 areas I just want to share with you. I mean, really, this could be an entire webinar, just the value that I've gained, but I want to highlight a couple. First one is communication. Second was in leadership. Communication, 2 aspects that immediately come to mind that I think are related, which is understanding effective and supportive feedback, as well as developing listening skills. These are really highlighted, I think, in a very underrated project in Pathways in Level 1. It's called Evaluation and Feedback. There are 3 presentations. And in my opinion, these are the basis of everything we do in Toastmasters. Again, learning that ability to listen, to give feedback, to receive feedback. There's another project in Pathways. It's a Level 2 primarily, which is learning about communication and leadership styles. I think this is so huge. I think it relates to what our speaker talked about earlier with the ability to understand different points of view. These are absolutely critical, I think, to success in communication and leadership team opportunities, specifically to leadership. In Toastmasters, I think it is very much a collaborative environment. And I think that this is quite indicative of Toastmasters. Next, we learn to lead with vision, mission, and purpose. These are explicit in all of the leadership projects throughout the Pathways curriculum. And then finally, we learn to plan fun, organize meaningful events. For example, this one. I would love to hear quickly from you if you would like to share anything about what I've just talked about. Jerry, do we see anybody either raising their hand or questions in the chat? And we'll move on quickly if nothing has come up.
Nothing yet.
Okay, we'll jump back in. Again, I want to really hear from you. It's not me talking at you, but I like to think that I might have one idea, you might have another. Between all of us, we can find the solutions together. Next, I want to show you this phenomena called the Pathways Tutor that never sleeps. It is, in fact, the Pathways Learning Center webpage. And this is available to you 24/7, so that this Pathways tutor, Dave Bones, can actually get some sleep. It contains all material from the webinar we're going to be discussing today and much more. Let's take a little visit so you can know precisely what I'm talking about here. If you haven't been here before, one way to get there, and you will be receiving a direct link in the follow-up as well as in the chat before we go today. But this is one way to do it if you've never been here. You just go to our district website. It's just d7toastmasters.org. And then you'll notice these tabs here. What I would encourage you to do is go to the Pathways tab and then just simply click on Pathways Learning Center. Of course, it will load up. It'll have its own page. This was a web page that was created in November of 2021. I personally have created this, and it is designed based upon opportunities that I've had a chance to help people. In other words, there was about 10 times more material that I could have put in here. There's been a lot of research that's taken place, but the way that this is designed is I could almost put a signature for a given member that I've had a chance to interact with and experience mutual learning, and that's what ended up getting plugged into the site. Just want to give you this sort of virtual tour. The way that it's set up, top to bottom, goes beginning, intermediate, and then more towards advanced. So I'll just quickly go through some of this. And if you remember nothing else about this website, I hope you'll remember this heartfelt motto, which is helping Toastmasters members one at a time. I made that distinction because early on there was a lot of talk about pathways adoption, statistics, and everything else. And I was left feeling a little bit cold with that and a little frustrated because I knew for a fact every single weekend or every single week I was having a chance to help someone with pathways, and the lights came on and we had a chance for meaningful conversation. And then others, they go at their own pace, and I wasn't trying to push them. And I just thought there was a disconnect between the two. But then what really came to me is, you know what, if we're helping Toastmasters members one at a time, then we're going to be fine. And it turns out we are. We've had some really wonderful increases in the adoption in our district. But really, it comes back to that one member at a time. Beginning Pathways resources at the top. We're going to go through a little bit of this. And Stephanie, if you were at the presentation yesterday, went through some of this. Again, I'm just giving you the quick tour here. There are some PDFs and video resources. Some people learn better by reading a PDF. Others might learn better by studying a video, so we wanted to provide both. And these are the essentials, the guiding principles of the Pathways Learning Center. It's the 80-20 principle, and I wonder if anybody's heard of this before, but in this case, it's where I believe that 20% of the tasks that you learn in Pathways provide 80% of the value, and you leave out the rest, because otherwise we can get overloaded. We don't want to do that. We don't want to be confusing, but in fact, we want to give you what you need when you need it, and do it in a way that can be at your own pace. We then head into the intermediate section. Again, these are skills that once you've sort of got a few basics, these are sort of the next steps to learn about. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but some Basecamp manager training. I don't know if you've had a chance to experience that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then for you, a little bit more advanced people, because that's what this webinar is advertised as, but it's not exclusive by any stretch. I see this as for any level. There are many resources. These are what I construed as the best in the world that I could find. Just to share a little bit about myself, for 365 days, 7 days a week without a break, decided to study pathways in all districts throughout the world, checking out every long form video on YouTube because I had a real passion for myself to first learn it, but then to teach it. I'm a passionate educator, and I've just been fascinated ever since. So check out these resources if you're that advanced person, and maybe you could find some helpful things to do. Pathways Mentor Program information, we're going to discuss this in a moment. And then finally, toward the bottom, there are even more resources. I just want to take a moment and check, Jerry, if we could, if there's any questions on what I just covered or comments. I see there's a bunch of things coming in the chat, but I'm going to leave that to you unless you'd like me to look at it, Jerry.
Yeah, there was one comment on the 80-20 rule being the Pareto Principle.
Pareto Principle. Absolutely. Thank you. Who said that? Can someone take credit for that?
Jerry Phillips, New Beginnings.
Thank you, Jerry. Excellent. Yes, a fellow fan. You probably know more about it, but I know some of the basics of it. Great. Any other comments or questions? Oh, we have a question.
Storytelling is in room D. This is E.
Oh, okay. That was an administrative question. I see.
Yep.
Great. All right. We're going to jump back in, going once, twice, 3 times. Here we go. Okay. The next promise was I wanted to help with 2 common challenges that come up, as well as provide solutions, right? Well, who knows what a problem is? And I guess I'll say it rhetorically. In my opinion, a problem can be an opportunity to find a solution. And that's what we're going to try and do here together today. Challenge number 1, that person that comes more from the traditional background, using CC and CL manuals, etc., coming to Pathways, and they really miss the physical manuals. What can we do to help those people? And then the second challenge is that I've had this feedback anyway, that sometimes the projects seem either too hard, take too long, or they're just too inflexible. They want to choose any speech topic for some of these projects, and they feel constricted in that regard. Let's cover these in order. The first challenge that we mentioned, again, is that they're sort of struggling with this transition, if you will. And what we came up with, because those folks are just uncomfortable a lot of times, I found, with that online environment at Basecamp, well, I thought to myself, what they're missing is a physical manual that they can hold. Now, I can't necessarily come up with manuals that aren't written, but PDFs, in my opinion, are the next best thing. And here's the thing that just hit me like a ton of bricks. This was through collaboration with some members about this. It turns out that there are only 3 online Basecamp activities required. That's it. Talk about Pareto Principle. Talk about 20% of tasks that provide 80% of the value. And hear me out. You might be going, no, that's impossible. How could you have all these webinars all year long and there's only 3 things I need to know? Well, allow me to present my case if I could. First of all, we need to know how to complete a project. If you're not sure about that skill, at the Pathways Learning Center, there is a PDF book, which I can show explicitly if anybody has questions. There's also a practice document as well as a video to help with this fundamental skill of completing a project. Now, what enables this PDF solution is, in fact, to print your projects one at a time. Everything else, other than what I'm describing, can be done just by reading the PDF and printing things. At the Pathways Learning Center, you can learn how to print your project if you're not sure how to do it, with the practice document or a video. And then finally, the last thing you need to know how to do is to complete a level. At the Pathways Learning Center, there is a PDF book and a video that helps you with these 3 things. And again, these 3 things are all you need if you are that person that really doesn't prefer the online environment. It's not that you can't do more online, but if you don't want to, these are the only 3 things you need to know about. So let's see if I can prove my case to you here at the Pathways Learning Center. I'm really hoping some people will have questions, because I know for a fact I'm not the only one that struggled in this regard in the beginning, and I would be surprised if some of us here, and if that's you, please don't feel embarrassed by this.
And I actually misunderstood that previous question. It wasn't looking for the storytelling breakout session. It was asking about storytelling in the Pathways program. What level? Where is that incorporated?
I see. Jerry, can we park that toward the end? Can you please keep that in mind? I do want to stay track on with this, but then the open Q&A, can we open it up at that time?
Sure.
Okay. I think that's a really good question. I want to answer it explicitly. So we talked about these 3 fundamental skills. The first one is the ability to complete a project. Completing a project is every single project we take on. Your first speech that you'll do is called the icebreaker project. In the old manuals, it was the icebreaker speech. Speech, project, they're often synonymous. Sometimes a project will have multiple presentations that are needing to be done, but that's the parallel I want to help you with. completing a project, I'm going to show you a couple of resources. First of all, if you're that PDF person, I want to let you know that I did create a PDF. It's called Toastmasters Level 1 Start to Finish for new members. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. Now this is 28 pages. You don't have to read all 28 pages. What I did is I created these chapters, the table of contents, if you will. This is designed, if I can show you around this document a little bit, in addition to showing you about completing the project. Let's say you have a member that literally just joined. They received a Toastmasters invitation, from the international organization, and they now need to create or authenticate their account. By clicking on this, literally every screenshot, we have a picture of their email, what that looks like. This is what they'll, congratulations, your membership has been accepted. So we did it literally screen by screen, using the arrows to indicate the entire process of getting this completed. So I want to now bring you back to the topic at hand, but I just wanted to make sure you knew about the table of contents. And every step of the way is taking place. Now, say if you are kind of really wanting to know some terms, people are throwing some terms around that you don't understand. I just have a very brief section. This is not long at all. It's just on page 28. What is pathways? What's a path? These basic terms that we're all supposed to know what they mean, but then sometimes people mean different things by it. So I just want to make sure you know about that. But here we are going to completing your first project. Now, the topic here, it says completing a project, as well as logging in, navigation basics, icebreaker completion. The thing I want to let you know is once you learn this skill of completing a project, you will do this the same way in every path, every project, every level. So I just want to touch base on that. So if you're that PDF person, but maybe you are someone that likes to learn by video. Well, I've got this video that I personally created, just called Completing a Project. It's a little bit longer because I do get into some other things. But say if you only have about 2 minutes, I also provided a 2-minute option. It's provided by Toastmasters International. You just select it in the carousel. So once you select it, then you simply play it.
Hi, I'm Melissa.
And Melissa's going to tell us, in fact, how to do that. So that's completing a project. Now, printing your project, I want to show you a little bit about that. That is easily done by watching this video. Same idea. And again, you have the carousel select down here. You select which one you want. And you can see it's just called completing a level. And you would then press that video. Now, this might be old hat to some of you. That's fine, but I can at least let you know that these are things that you can share with your new members, perhaps in your new member orientation at some point. The other place that it is, and all I did is I did a control home to bring me back to the top quickly. In the Pathways resources, completing a level is also in this document. That's one of the chapters. We were talking about printing a project as well as completing a level. Another place that you can sort of practice some of this is in this practice sample icebreaker project. So by clicking on this, you can literally just have fun with that and get a chance to work on it without making a difference in your own Basecamp. So I just selected English, and I'm going to show you very briefly how to print your project in here. I hope that this is familiar to you. This should look like the icebreaker, the first speech that you have done. If you haven't, this is just what it looks like. You would then click begin if you like and go through every single screen. I'm going to go ahead and streamline it with this up arrow here, where you can get anywhere, anytime within a project window by using this up arrow, where you're going to find the ability to print your project. And this is the same for every project and every level and every path. You're going to see something called your evaluation. You click on that and you'll see that option there, print my project. And then if you're familiar with printing PDFs, it will simply then print your project. So those are the three basic skills: completing a project, printing your project, and completing a level.
And Alan has raised his hand.
Okay, great. Let's get a question, get that question answered. Alan, is that right?
Yep. Hi, Dave.
Alan, please.
It's not, though, just for the everyday Toastmasters. I have to print, and I do print
Yes.
every single speech in Toastmasters
Yep.
for all of the inmates, for all of the prisoners
Yes.
in all of the institutions, but also at my age, which is 75, in one of my clubs, I am the youngest member of the club, and at least 3 of the members don't have computers.
Yes.
So they have to have printed materials as well. And many of those paths don't have printed materials.
Right.
So I use the printed materials that I use for the inmates.
Yep. Yep.
And it's very helpful. If anybody does a path, keep the printed materials and use them for the rest of the club. Because so many people, I tell them the first thing you do, if you like the printed materials, presentation mastery is the closest one.
Yes.
That's what you've got to do first. I mean, if you need to get into Pathways without complaining so much, start with presentation mastery, and you'll at least begin to like it. And then if you don't like it after that, you might as well get out of Toastmasters. But
Well, that's great,
District
Alan. It
7
actually
allowed me to print every single speech, and I have a complete library, as does every prison. So that really helps. So what you're doing, I learned a long time ago.
yes.
But what Toastmasters warned me about, and I haven't heard you mention it yet, if you print and you give that to a Toastmasters person, you are not violating the Toastmasters trademark.
Oh, okay. That's
But
really good
if
to
you
know.
give it to a non-Toastmaster, you are violating Toastmasters trademark. So you have to be careful who you give it to.
Excellent. Well, first of all, big hand for Alan. Alan is a tremendous contributor in our district, and I'm very familiar with the work that you've done. I think Alan makes some great points, and I'm actually going to be covering specifically some of what you had described a little bit later in the webinar. So I think that's excellent material for us to consider. Any other?
And Nate had his hand raised.
Oh, Nate,
Dropped
please.
it.
Yeah, I just kind of want to riff on what Alan was talking about with the ability to print these projects. So first off, I love that Pathways can kind of meet you where you're at in terms of your preferences.
Yes.
And then myself personally, sometimes I just kind of sabbatical from all the screens and the devices. And so if I'm out somewhere, but I want to work on a speech because I'm in my creative, natural element, having one of these things printed out in a backpack is just, fabulous. I love it.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. Big hand for Nate. Bob, could we make me a co-host and make sure that everybody's muted throughout the presentation until we call upon it? We want to hear from anybody. The reason I mention that is because in the recording, it's really useful to have it nice and quiet during that time. Great. Any other questions that you see there, Jerry? Anybody?
Not at this time.
Oh, and I see Blair had his hand up though.
Just yesterday, I got asked what would I do to help a new member with Pathways, and I really wanted to share with everybody what I said yesterday. I tried to convey as concisely as possible the idea of liking it, having fun with it. You just said the words, have a little fun with it. And that's, for me, that's something big. If you go in there all serious, anything in life, you know, so the feeling, because I came into Toastmasters right when Pathways was already there. I never had a manual, and when I went in, I said, oh, look at this, there's videos, there's these projects are great, this is fun. And I got some coffee and a snack and a treat, and then I went into my Pathways. And for me, right from the advent of my Pathways experience, it was a good place to be. It's not, don't see it as work. See it as, oh, I can't wait to get home from work so I can go to my Pathways where it's fun, fun.
That's great. Well, you've inspired me. Big hand for Blair. Thank you, Blair.
And Jerry Phillips has a navigation question. Members get confused with completing projects versus a level. At the end of a project, when a member completes the assessor skills after, it's not obvious how to return to the curriculum. Any helpful hints?
Absolutely. Thank you. And that was Jerry, is that correct?
Jerry Phillips, yes.
Yes.
Excellent, Jerry. Yes, I do. I would point them either to the videos that I mentioned or to the PDF, Toastmasters Level 1, start to finish for new members. In both of those documents, which we were just talking about, I make a real sharp distinction, particularly in that PDF, of what the difference is. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anybody else's, but on my PDF, I think I describe it even in a more clear way than Toastmasters International themselves do about how to complete a level. There are some of the screens that they kind of leave out, and I've noticed some members are getting experiencing confusion. So I just put in those things that they were confused about to make it even more clear. Can I put that homework on you to take a look at those to help those members with that?
Yes, I'd be delighted. I'm so glad you brought this to our attention. I didn't realize, I knew this Learning Center was here, but to what degree, all the helpful videos and everything. I appreciate all your hard work on this.
I very much appreciate your feedback. It's certainly a labor of love, and you guys being here is exactly why we do it.
One quick question. They just updated the website and everything. Did they do anything to Pathways to make it any friendlier?
Other than the Pathways tutor that never sleeps, meaning in D7, not a lot of changes per se. That had more to do with the fact that members can pay their own dues. You know, it's not related to Pathways, the updates that took place. But Jerry, do please stay in touch. I am going to be sending an email out to all the participants. Bob, I trust he's going to somehow get all the participants to me, and then I'll be sure to follow up with the slides, my contact information, including the edited video of this as well. So we want to make sure anybody here that has a question, we want you to know that you matter a tremendous amount, and we want to make sure that you are supported. So thank you for that question, Jerry. I'm going to jump back into the slides. There's so much that we need to cover and will cover. The second aspect, I'm going to say, Alan sort of already touched on this, but the Pathways projects are construed as too hard, take too long, or they're too inflexible. They want to just be able to choose whatever speech topic they want. The two solutions that I'm going to propose, one is the one that Alan already mentioned, which is to choose that presentation mastery path. And the reason for that is because it is a public speaking focus. It is the most similar to the former traditional program of the CC and CL manuals, that sort of thing. And then secondly, I would encourage you to be flexible within the project interpretation, realizing that in fact it is member growth that's the priority, not so much following the rules to the absolute letter. And again, I really would love to illustrate this at the Pathways Learning Center and just use a visual aid. It's called the Paths and Projects Catalog. Stephanie alluded to this last night, and I'd like to just quickly share this with you so that you know about this resource as well, especially if you weren't there last night. This is in the intermediate pathways section, just again, top to bottom, beginning, intermediate, more advanced. And then in this section are the intermediate and advanced level resources. And that's where this is. You can see that right here. Intermediate advanced level tools and reference materials. The top left, this is called the Pathways, Paths, and Projects catalog. We're going to click on this, and I think you're going to like this. It's going to illustrate our point that we're talking about, and maybe even a little bit more. It contains all 11 paths. Jerry, what path are you in? I'd love to use you as an example if we could. What path are you in, or maybe someone that you've been helping?
I'm in the effective coaching right now. Or what Jerry were you talking to?
Oh, yeah, Jerry Phillips, I guess. Yes, effective coaching.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just want to click on that. I want to show you that this, by clicking on that, brings you to your entire path all in one page. So every single project, every single level is here. Now, let's say, Jerry, if I were to kind of move around this page a little bit, is there a project that you're kind of curious? Well, someone mentioned storytelling. Let's see if we can find a good one for storytelling. So there's a level 3 project. It's called Connect with Storytelling. Is that agreeable, Jerry? Do you mind if we check that one out?
Sure.
Great. So it's clickable. So I just simply click on it. And now you're going to learn more, in fact, about what Connect with Storytelling is. This project addresses storytelling techniques and descriptive skills to help every speech relatable and interesting. It gives the purpose, overview, and tells what the project entails, which is essentially working on storytelling skills, and it's a 5 to 7 minute speech. Now, let's say you're still curious. I want to get back. What do I do? All you do is you click on this little arrow to get you back. And now you're back right where you were. Now, the other thing is we've been talking about presentation mastery as the most similar to the former curriculum. So I'm going to click on that. And I just want to, again, illustrate here the way that this works as well. So the thing to look for in path selection, and again, if you're that traditional Toastmaster, you've already picked it. It's presentation mastery. But we want to look for what are called the required projects. For example, where people do run into issues of they take too long, they're too hard. In some of these leadership projects, there are things like the high performance leadership project, of which I've done and love, but they are a commitment. It involves, guidance committee. It's a major ordeal, and you'll learn a lot. But for example, the highest level project in presentation mastery is called Prepare to Speak Professionally. I'm just going to click on this so you can see it. This is the one that will be the hardest, if it's going to be the hardest. And basically, it is giving a speech for 18 to 22 minutes. Now, if you are someone that takes a long time to do, which that would be me, I'd need to spend some time with that, then that is the extent that you need to do. But it is not a matter of guidance committees, projects, or any of that material. And then back to some of the basic level, you get to choose some of these open-ended speeches. So for example, what if I went on a vacation to Hawaii, which I've never been, but I want to go someday? There are so many of these speeches that I could incorporate that with. Icebreaker, I'm introducing myself as Dave Bones, and I love to go on vacation. Boom, I'm talking about Hawaii. Write a speech with purpose. My purpose, you can use that topic. Introduction to vocal variety and body language. The vocal variety and body language is sort of the means, if you will, to express your message, which still could be my vacation to Hawaii, evaluation to feedback, completely open-ended for all of those. You can tie that in with just about everything. Some of the ones that can be requiring a little flexibility, if you wanted to slip that in, introduction to Toastmasters mentoring. This in level 2 is really an experience that you had as a mentee or protege in an experience, describing that, sort of getting your mind and context warmed up for the idea of mentoring. But truly, I think if you were creative, you could say, you were thinking about mentoring, you describe this, but then you can still talk about your vacation to Hawaii within there in a story format. So that, why am I saying that? Because that's the flexibility. So the two tools for that person that finds these projects difficult, taking too long, would be A, presentation mastery, which we just described, and two, be flexible. Like, for example, my idea about even the introduction to Toastmasters mentoring. Any questions on this? And again, I'd love to hear any comments. There's some things that have come in the chat. What do we got, Jerry?
I don't see any new comments from the last time.
Okay, all right, we'll cook along because we have a lot to go through. This is great. And I love everything that has been shared so far. The next thing that I wanted to tell you about were some of these miscellaneous tools. All of these big picture resources, which I'm about to show you, are at the Pathways Learning Center that we've been visiting. If there's one message here that we're trying to put out, is that the Pathways Learning Center, we're intending it to be a one-stop education resource for all of your beginning, intermediate, and advanced level Pathways needs. In other words, a big frustration for me when I first started learning was, oh yes, we have this great resource. Let me send you these links or these attachments. Well, what happens if I don't run across that person that has these great links or these great attachments? I don't want to be, having suggested that, and I'm not saying that this is not right at the right time, but when someone says to me, oh, just Google it, well, it's kind of like saying, oh, I love everybody. Well, I guess in a way you don't love anybody, because if you're everything to everybody, then you're nothing to nobody, in my opinion. I'll get off my high horse with that. But we wanted it to be a one-stop education resource. You don't have to go any place except this Pathways Learning Center. And when I get feedback, we do add the fundamentals as we go along. First of all, the Basecamp Manager training, I want to give that to you. It's specifically this video. It's called Basecamp Manager, VPE, President, Secretary. Those are the roles that are Basecamp managers in every single club. Next, I would love to go through the Pathways DTM requirements. This actually came from a question that came in my email a couple of days ago. I was like, okay, I got to change my slides. This is such a good question. So it's now in there. Thank you to that questioner. I don't know if he's here today. And there are two documents I want to share. One is a PDF, which has the entire Pathways DTM requirements in one sheet. And then a brand new document that I just created yesterday. And I just called it, next Pathways Paths and Projects Catalog also illustrates this. And then finally, my new document is information about the DTM project, which I've found a little challenging to get information about, but I've now hopefully made it easier for you. And then finally, there is an entirely new section at our website. Many people love mentoring in Toastmasters, but a lot of people have no idea about the Pathways Mentor Program. So what we did is we created the D7 Pathways Mentor Program comprehensive tutorials. So we're going to be going to Basecamp Manager, DTM, and the mentoring. We're going to hop over to the Pathways Learning Center and take a look at some of those things.
And Angela had her hand raised.
Okay, great. Do you have a question, or should I go through this really quick?
You can go through it really quick and then I'll come back at the end, no problem.
Oh, great, excellent. So the intermediate section is what's going to be housing that Basecamp Manager video. Just really briefly, if you want to check this out, you'll again just look for Basecamp Manager basic level. And then we have this video. It does offer the topics covered in the video. It's 14.5 minutes. I streamlined that. My original presentation on this was over an hour, and it was a real challenge, but I think we got it down to the basics in 14.5 minutes. Now, again, this is the basic level. The fundamental skills that you'll learn about in this 14.5 minute video and others, but the fundamentals that I think that you would really enjoy is, first of all, that in fact, you can't just choose Basecamp managers in your club, but in fact, if you are the VPE, the president, or the secretary, that's always going to be the situation where those are always the base camp managers. Next, you're going to learn how to log in as a base camp manager. It's not hard at all, but we make it explicit in the video. Really, really important is pending requests. This is where most of the time it's going to be an education award. You'll learn about this. We're very explicit in the video how to go about this. There is another thing called external training requests. It seems to be less common these days that people are using that. That's if you give a presentation outside of your club. You can survive pretty well even without that. So the big value that we're going to really close in on is the idea of processing education awards. And what you'll see in the video, I don't have time to go through it today, but we can take explicit questions if you do have questions on that, is that awards need to be processed both in Basecamp and in Club Central. Before I head into the other topics, Angela, does your question relate to this, or shall I continue on the other ones?
It was actually relating to the section just prior to this.
Oh, okay. Well, I
I
guess.
just wanted to concur with something you said.
Oh, okay. Let's do that. Let's just take a moment to make sure that we're clear on that, please.
I can put my camera on, no problem. I'm sitting outside. Oh, okay. I didn't know I had a virtual background on. Sitting outside. I just want to say that when you were saying, people say, oh, I can't find the right speech topic. Like, for example, I suppose about a year or so ago, I was watching a video, The Samurai. I love The Samurai. And then I had to do a project of mentoring. And I thought, well, it's probably, I can't remember, it's my third or fourth pathway. I've got pathways going all over the place.
Yes.
Then I thought, well, how would a samurai and mentoring go together?
Yes.
Because let's face it, if you haven't got the passion, the speech is never going to come right.
Yes.
With this in mind, I would thought, well, I love this movie. Then I thought, mentoring, what is it saying? And then by that, I put the two together. With this in mind, I think that look at the project and don't be narrow-minded, be broad-minded and think, what is going on around me at the moment? There might be an unconscious mentor, for example, taking that project. There might be a movie you've seen. How does it apply? How does it apply to you?
Yes.
And that's what I just wanted to say. Whatever's going on in your life, there's a project for that.
Wow, that's our tagline. Whatever is going on in your life, there's a project for that. I couldn't have said it any better. Big hand for Angela. Thank you. I'm so glad we took a moment for that. If you don't mind, I'm going to borrow that.
Go for it.
Excellent. All right. Wonderful. I just had a chance to learn something about my own messaging. Thank you for that. Okay, great. The next topic was this idea of DTM requirements. Fred, are you here? Could you put your hand up if you're here? Do we see Fred's hand, or maybe he's not here? Well, Fred, you'll get a chance to watch the video. Hi, Fred, in YouTube land. All right. The question from Fred was wanting to understand what is involved in this Pathways DTM. How is it different from the previous program, or just in general, what's involved? Glad you asked. We have a document for that. It's just called Pathways DTM Requirements. This is by Mark Snow. He's the world's first Pathways DTM, and he has a wonderful way of explaining things in a structured and simple way. So as we go through this, literally, it starts from you joined as a member. And I would encourage you to go to the Pathways Learning Center and download this, but we're just going to do the overview. And he splits it up into sort of sections, which is not just a list of, oh my God, please don't overload me anymore. But in fact, he splits it into education, which is complete one learning path, complete a second, complete the Distinguished Toastmasters project. Club leadership, he outlines it's a 12-month term for a club officer. Any 2 6-month terms, I think that's probably more appropriate for those clubs that do officers twice a year. District leadership, serve as a district officer for a 12-month term. Club extension, meaning reaching out into new club territory. You have the choice of either being a sponsor speechcraft coordinator or youth leadership coordinator, and then finally supporting the club. That would be serving as a club mentor or club coach. And my goodness, all on one page. The VPE submits your Pathways Award, and that's it. So it doesn't need pages. It doesn't need incredible amount of links. This is it. Just go to this page, and it explains it. Now, one thing that I want to bring to your attention in our brief time together is this idea of a DTM project. I want to show this to you because I just created this. I found this to be hard to get definitive information on. So I just want to really show this to you. The points to note on this: the DTM project will not automatically be included in your Basecamp. It must be requested as below. Upon completion of both one complete path and at least level 3 of your second, you are eligible to request the DTM project at the following email address. And it's listed there, educationprogram@toastmasters.org. There's more that you probably want to know about this. And the only two sources that I could really recommend, the first one, I was hoping to find something like this as a Toastmasters official document, but what they don't list typically is this procedure where you have to request this project. The only place I could find it online, if anybody else knows where it is, I'd love to hear that, but it was in October 2021 article, and it's listed accordingly. Here, you click on that, and in the right sidebar, it's just called DTM, the new service project, and then general requirements is where it is. I wish it was simpler, but that's something that I like to do, is provide the actual documentation. Don't just believe me. Don't appeal to an authority is what I say to myself when I'm trying to learn something. But in fact, let's get the evidence, and that's what I'm trying to provide. And then finally, District 57 has a wonderful article. You're welcome to check that out, and it does lay out some of the fundamentals. Finally, the last advanced aspect I want to share with you is the Pathways Mentor Program. This is called the D7 Pathways Mentor Program, Comprehensive Tutorials. I created this, well, quickly, what are other members saying? One member said, for years, I have not been able to access the mentoring program on TI. In other words, the Toastmasters Pathways Mentor Program. But now I have. I've started the process, and I appreciate your clear directions in helping me move forward. I was like, wow, this is so cool. We're in the right direction here. And it's primarily a video tutorial, but again, it's comprehensive. Every single level, every single project, curriculum item, as well as the documents that I could share where, even a non-member could come to this public site and look at it. I hope that you'll find that useful. Any quick questions from the audience on that as we get ready to kind of head towards our closing section a little bit? Jerry, nothing?
I am not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, all right, let's continue forward. This, again, is that sort of open Q&A. It could be anything, and I think in some ways it sort of went a little bit in that direction. It was, we wanted to cover that question about storytelling. Is that right? And then I do want to come back to myself for closing comments. Can we get that person that had the question about storytelling and reiterate that again?
That was Lindsay. Lindsay Batchelder from Corvallis. Okay,
would you like to converse with us by any chance? And if not, I can answer it more generally. Why don't I answer it more generally? But if the speaker wants to engage, I'd love to do that. But let me quickly touch on this. And what I'm going to do is scroll back up to that Paths and Projects catalog. So let's be kind of explicit with this. The question, I think, had to do with a storytelling path. So let's see. This document which we've been looking at contains all 11 paths. And I wonder which one she might have been talking about. These are the paths, and I wonder if perhaps what the questioner was referring to was the storytelling advanced manual in the former program. And if that's the case, I can relate to that. I learned a lot in that advanced manual. I love that, and I still have it somewhere, I'm sure. So maybe we can try and find some parallels for that person. And I'm going to show you two things, actually. One is this presentation mastery path, if you're looking for that similarity. Certainly we do have connect with storytelling as a project to work on. And then secondly, I was made aware of this next thing that I want to share with you from a conversation with someone that was in the engaging humor path. Actually, Bob, you know I'm talking about you. Would you like to talk about that storytelling tool that others might be interested in as well, by any chance?
Yeah, sure. I was having a conversation with Dave and a couple of other folks after a meeting once, and I said, storytelling came up, and I said, I remember there's someplace on the web on Pathways that you can go and you can make a list of stories, and then darned, I couldn't find the darn thing. And then, I finally found it in the old path that I closed out. And sure enough, there was a link to get to it, but it was in the engaging humor path. You can actually collect some stories there, and it allows you to warehouse that stuff. So, but that's the only one. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. That's a great question. Storytelling is really the essence of what we do. There should be a much more robust way to capture that information. So that's an excellent question.
Well, yes, exactly. And you remember at the beginning, we sort of framed it as the idea of what's a problem? Anybody? Bob, what's a problem? Or anybody? And I guess I'll say it rhetorically, at least in my mind, the problem is an opportunity to find a solution. And this is what we're doing. Solution number one was that presentation mastery, if you like the similarity of the old program. Secondly, use that storytelling project to engage with those skills. And then finally, the other solution is, in fact, choose engaging humor. And if nothing else, not only will you work on storytelling through this excellent tool that Bob's talking about, which I'm sure is still available to anybody that chooses it. I think Cindy mentioned that she did the same thing. And she keeps a notebook of ideas. That is amazing. I love that, Cindy. But that's another thing you can do. And not only will you learn more about storytelling in your engaging humor path, but you'll hopefully become even more funny in the process, or at least enjoy that process. Any other comments or questions, or should we head into the home stretch here?
Cindy Hub acknowledged that the engaging humor path did address the storytelling, and Angela has her hand raised.
Okay, Angela, great. Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you again for this opportunity. When you think of it, what is a speech? The speech has a beginning, middle, and end. What relates you to the speech? A personal story. Basically, what I'm saying is, I'm a huge storyteller. Whenever I do a speech, I always try and pick a story, yet you relate it to the speech. Basically, storytelling is in all your speeches, because that is how you say, you're not just saying to the audience, this is my speech, listen. You're saying to the audience, this is my speech, and this is how it relates to me by bringing in your personal stories. Yes, it may not be exactly what you want. Just think how much fun you can have and how many stories you can bring in over the course of all your paths.
Excellent.
That's what I wanted to say. It's part of your structure.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Angela. And you have such a great speaking voice. I might hire you for some voiceover work if you don't mind.
Go for it.
I love it. I love it.
And we are at 4 minutes, and Lyle has his hand raised.
Oh, okay. Lyle, would you like to share something briefly? Lyle, were you trying to speak?
No, okay. Yeah, one of the things I ran across was giving all this information to a new member. I've run into a problem of information overload.
Yes.
And so maybe you can discuss that, how to deal with information overload, because you give them all this, go to this website, there's all this stuff, and they just go, whoa,
Yes.
I gotta learn all that. No, you know, you have to kind of you don't have to learn all this, but you have to be careful of that because sometimes that puts people off right from the very get-go. You're trying to introduce them to pathways and they're going, their eyes are getting this big around, it is.
100%, Lyle, if I can quickly give that answer to you, and then we got to close in about 2.5 minutes. The thing that I would say is, let's come back to that concept of the 3 things. So you want to help them. Of course, you have your regular new member orientation, which involves your club and the meeting roles, that sort of thing. I'm not talking about that right now, but help them to complete a project, make sure they know who to do that, give them my PDF or give them that video that I have, or if they only have 2 minutes, spend 2 minutes watching the video called Completing a Project. Secondly, if they don't want to do a lot of online stuff, make sure they know how to print their project. And third, it doesn't have to be immediate. By the time they're done with level 1 requirements, then make sure they know how to complete a level. So complete a project, print a project, complete a level. And Lyle, you have my email address, so do follow up with me if it seems like I could help even further with that. To recap, today we covered the Pathways value proposition. We revealed this concept of the Pathways tutor that never sleeps, which is the Pathways Learning Center, solutions for the 2 common challenges, gave you those tools just now. I want to put out a call to action if I could. Regarding the new D7 Pathways Learning Center page, please spread the good word if you would like to do that. Secondly, if you're interested in teaching Pathways using this curriculum, you are needed. Please email me. Next, come celebrate the Pathways growth in our district or ask questions for the final 2022 Pathways Learning Lab. It's on this Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Sign up at the D7 calendar. Thank you so much for your contribution in Toastmasters. And again, I just want to reiterate our tagline at the Pathways Learning Center, which is helping Toastmasters members one at a time. This is what means a great deal to us. And I encourage you, and I know you're already doing this, to continue helping Toastmasters one at a time. Back to our room host, Jerry.
Thank you, Dave. A lot of valuable information. Excellent job in your presentation.